Megyn Kelly's book is coming out. It's called Settle for More, and she's now included passages in there where she's being honest about what happened with Roger Ailes. So in the past, he was too powerful to deal with, and she is honest about that. But where she drew the line was when Gretchen Carlson first came out with charges of sexual harassment. She said, at that point, I was approached several times, and several times I refused. She said there was no way I was going to lie to protect him. Now, look, she didn't come forward earlier, and this sexual harassment happened to her about 10 to 11 years ago. But it was one thing to keep it hidden, and it's her personal choice what she does with that information. But when they say to her, hey, come lie on behalf of the guy who also sexually harassed you, that's where her line was. She said, I'm not going to do it. But she acknowledged crossing him, she says, was a major risk. But what if, God forbid, he was still doing it to someone? Which, of course, he was. That's why he got in trouble in the first place. So she goes back and explains what happened back in the day. Kelly claims in the book, as Radar Online explains, that he started to harass her too in the summer of 2005, a few months after she was hired as a legal correspondent in Fox's Washington bureau. It's interesting, you know, at one point he stops, and he does wind up promoting her even though she didn't sleep with him. But he picks on the people with the least amount of power. So when she first comes in, she's the most vulnerable. If he decides to fire her, she's back into the wilderness. Now, I don't remember what particular station she came from, but generally speaking, off to Milwaukee you go. And you didn't make it in cable news, you're done, and your career is toast. Or I get to promote you, and then you're going to make a ton of money. Right now, for example, she makes $15 million a year. Her contract's almost up. They think she's going to make $20 million a year next. Now, that is a lot of incentive to play ball. What does the predator do? He picks on the people with the least amount of power. Later, when she already accrued power and had leverage, he leaves her alone. Classic predator move. So she writes that she was informed by her managing editor at the time that she'd, quote, captured the attention of Mr. Ailes, and she was summoned to the first of a series of meetings in his Manhattan office. Now, you did not want to capture the attention of Mr. Ailes, because that attention was going to be brought to bear upon you and not in a positive way. She explains now, this is Megyn Kelly in the book. Roger began pushing the limits. There was a pattern to his behavior. I would be called into Roger's office. He would shut the door. Over the next hour or two, he would engage in a kind of cat and mouse game with me, veering between obviously inappropriately sexually charged comments, e.g. about the very sexy bras I must have and how he'd like to see me in them, and legitimate professional advice. So, I mean, how I'd like to see you in sexy bras is not really borderline. That's definitely sexual harassment when that person is working for you. That's not like, oh, hey, we were in a bar and I was flirting with you and I crossed the line in etiquette and maybe that was not the right way to flirt with you. No, he's her boss. It's going to get worse. He offered to advance her career, quote, in exchange for sexual favors. Well, I mean, textbook sexual harassment, she writes. And even though she says she rejected, quote, every single one, she claims he tried, quote, physical advances. So, not done yet, but in January of 2006, she claims he, quote, crossed a new line trying to grab me repeatedly and kiss me on the lips. When she shoved him away, she alleges he asked me an ominous question. When is your contract up? And then for the third time, he tried to kiss me. A fact pattern fairly similar to Donald Trump's. Kiss them without permission, and then use your power and leverage over them. Trump would talk about how he'd go into the Miss Universe contestants' changing rooms to see them naked on purpose. He said, because there's nothing they could do. I hold the power over them. It's my pageant. I own the place. And here's Roger Ailes. Hey, when's your contract up? You better play ball. And then kisses without permission and asks for more. These guys are absolutely gross. They've been doing this for a long, long time. In the case of Roger Ailes, dozens of women have come forward dating back decades. This is what he's been doing forever. He usually picks on people who have the least amount of power and targets them and has been harassing folks like this until he finally got exposed. He's a terrible, terrible guy. That's the guy who ran Fox News since its beginning. And you wonder why the stuff on air is toxic, because the guy who created it was toxic in the first place. We need independent media to make sure that we hold corporate media accountable. The people that can make that happen is you. You make the Young Turks possible. tytnetwork.com/join. Join us. Be the revolution.